What's going on, people? What's really good? It's your boy Marvelat, and this is the Nerds in the Hood. Folks, don't know if you're Power fans. Not sure if you're fans of the series Power, but I am, right? I've been a fan of all of the series they've done, from the OG Power that they call it with Ghost, to Raising Kanan, which was about 50 Cent's character Kanan as a prequel series, to the story of Ghost's son Tariq, who becomes a new Ghost, which I just call the Boruto of Power. If you're an anime fan, you know, you know. But what I want to talk about is a show that just ended last week, which was another spinoff in the Power universe. That's how popular the show got, that it was able to branch out 3 spinoffs with 2 possible ones on the way, a few others that got canceled, yada, yada, yada. And this one was called Force. If you didn't see Force, I suggest you go see it. It's only 3 seasons, 30 episodes. Even though they're all an hour, you could bang out these 30 episodes in a few days, right? This is the story of Ghost's best friend, Tommy Eagan, who's played by Joseph Sikora, good actor. And if you've seen him in the OG Power, then you already know what you was getting into on this Power. So this is just a tale of him skipping town from New York. He was supposed to originally go to Los Angeles. He changed his mind, ended up staying in Chicago, and yeah, chaos ensued from there, right? And if you've been keeping up with the show, you know that the show recently ended its whole story, its whole series this past week. So I just want to talk about that mainly. I don't want to talk about the show as a whole. I want to talk about what happened on this ending. Because, man, I got to say, this was an ending I was not expecting, per se. And the payoff to what we all thought was coming, I don't know. Let me talk about it. First off, cheers are in order, because the show was able to get itself off the ground and have some type of an ending, because Stars was going to just completely cancel it altogether anyway. So it was able to tell the story and try to basically finish it up in some fashion. So one can't really be mad at that, right? Um, it's just the fact that it just kind of had to rush itself. Like the story that it probably wanted to tell, it told a more condensed story in 10 episodes rather than branch out and expand to what it really wanted to tell in more episodes, right? If they have maybe a 4th season, maybe they could have told a little more, right? So here's some of the things I want to say. Like, maybe they're plot holes, maybe they're just things that don't make sense, but this is what I wanted to talk about. Let's just address the elephant in the room first off. Ghost son Tariq comes in as a cameo appearance for like the last, let's say, 10 minutes of the show. He comes to help Tommy in an all-out war between Gennard and Tommy, right? And they end up winning because of Tariq and a few of Tariq's other, like, you know, goons and stuff, his distros and stuff like that. Now, first off, a lot of people was thinking, okay, if Tariq's coming, if you know the show Power Book 2 Ghosts, you know that Tariq might not be alone, right? You may think that Braden's coming. You may think that Kane's coming. You may think another Tahada's coming, right? Drew or you know, Diana. You may think Effie's coming. You may think that somebody else is coming besides Tariq to come help Tommy out. But you also got to remind yourself, one, they don't really have to go with Tariq, right? They don't know who Tommy is like that. None of them really do, and none of them really care, maybe except maybe Braden. And even then, he probably doesn't care. 2, they also have to think about the budget, right? If you're paying Tariq for probably this guest appearance, you're going to have to pay the rest of them for this one guest appearance to do 10 minutes and probably not talk. And trust me, folks, the Tariq cameo is brief. So to try to say, okay, why wasn't Braden there or why wasn't Kane there? Now you have to enhance the story for these people to be there. Maybe Ashanti and Effie collabo would have been funny or cool, but not really, right? We did get what we wanted, which was Tommy's 2 nephews, right? Tariq uh, and D-Mac basically sitting together and talking it out real quick, and him just explaining, like, you know, things happen and life goes on, right? But imagine if we got I don't know, you can't have a Kane and Jannard because they're supposed to be enemies if that would be the case. So the closest other thing you would have got is maybe Tommy and Braden and Effie and Shanti. And Tommy and Braden, I would love to see that, but Effie and Shanti, I don't really care about that. So at the end of the day, I'm not really that stoked about getting those cameos, but it would have been cool. In regards to that, also to just keep flowing off of that energy, uh, Tommy did say, "Is there anybody who wants to get their hands dirty?" And then Tariq kind of came with just some extras, right? So those are people that probably went to get their hands dirty. Maybe it was somebody to say, "Hey, I've never been to Chicago. Let me go see Chicago." I don't know, but what I do know is it was a funny cameo because Tariq basically pulled up, saved Tommy at like the last split second, and then um, he just talked to D-Mac, gave him some advice, lied, didn't tell him that he offed his pops, and then they just went to a rooftop, him and Tommy, and he's like, "Hey man, you got Chicago on lock. That's really great. Want to come back to New York?" They never mentioned the fact that Tommy doesn't exist in New York anymore because he is technically unalive. So he skipped town. Remember? We all remember that. In Power Book 2, he comes back, but then he fakes his death, right? So he's supposed to be gone. So unless he's going to work in the shadows, I really don't see how this is going to happen. He also didn't have to come back when he's running Chicago. He has a whole coalition that he now has with him, Shanti, Miguel, Che. Like they all work. He's not working directly partnering with Shay, but he's cool with Shay enough that he can do his own thing. So you have all of these people, and you're gonna give it all up to go to New York. I don't know if he's gonna take his baby moms. We know that his mom's up there, so he'll probably meet up with his moms again. But is he gonna take his baby moms? Is Miguel gonna be cool with this? Like these are questions that you now want to know. Who from Chicago is gonna go with Tommy? Maybe DMAC. But outside of DMAC, that's really it. Shanti's not gonna go. She's running Chicago now. Miguel's probably not gonna go neither because he's also running Chicago now. So now it's kind of like, what was this war for? It's just like, okay, I won a war. I took over Chicago. Now I'll leave. Will I get money from Chicago? Maybe, but I don't need Chicago anymore. What? So that was where I was coming from with that. I felt like Tariq didn't need to coerce him into coming to New York. But if it turns into something where they do make a new series about Tariq and Tommy running the show in New York and trying to run the show in New York, and the challenges that come with that, I'll probably stick around and watch. I just felt like after all that, we didn't need that much of an ending. We could have just had something where maybe Tommy goes off to Mexico and chills with his baby moms for a little bit, and then maybe they come back with the kid and start a new life in Chicago, running things. I don't know. Now, Jannard. Let me talk about this man real quick, ladies and gentlemen. Jannard Sampson and his brother Diamond, to me, made season 3 what it was. Because at first it was kind of like, okay, Miguel and Tommy have like joined forces now, and we kind of saw that coming. It was building up to it over time, and then the Ortega thing and the D-Lo or whatever, big D, what you pause, like those guys. We knew that they was going. I thought that, yeah, King Lo. I thought that those guys were going to be like the big bads of the end of the season, and then you throwing Stacey Marks. So I thought maybe those three, and then you had like Vic turning back into like almost kind of like his father, which is still highlighted at the end, which that was cool to me. But I just feel like, again, you had these characters, you built them up to be great. You took out his brother, then you built Jannard up to be even stronger because now he was able to see clearly, even though he lost his brother in the process. But if we learned anything from fiction, when you lose a loved one, that is how you gain a stronger power, which is a power you didn't probably knew you had. And that is when you become who you were meant to become. So Jannard lived long enough to be the villain, to watch his brother go out to become a stronger villain. And I hope that if they do make a power show, maybe Jannard goes crazy and says, I want so much revenge on Tommy, I'm willing to follow him to New York to take him out. I'm not gonna, go with Shanti or go at Miguel. I don't need to go at them. My beef is not with them anymore. My conflict now is with Tommy. So if they do something where him and Vic join forces, go all the way up to New York and go look for him, I may be cool with that, right? But if they just do something where Janah just stays in Chicago and takes out Miguel and makes Tommy come back, then I might actually give up on Power. But I do want to say that Jannard's character change between season 2 and season 3 was something epic. He made season 3, him and Diamond. The whole just CBI joining forces, and we got to see basically a taste of what they would have done had Tommy never showed up. Had Diamond just got out of prison and Jannard was still the man in CBI and they joined forces, this is probably what we would have got. Them just tearing up Chicago left and right, right? And when King Lo got out, maybe they would have just probably went at him too. But they probably would have got taken out by Shay, more or less, right? But we also got to think about it too, that if Tommy never showed up to Chicago, CBI probably would have stayed on their side. The Flynns would still be alive and they would have stayed on their side. And Shay would have stayed on his side and Miguel would have stayed on his. There might have been a war at some point, right? But they probably would have just stayed away from each other because they would have known, like, I'm not going to CBI territory. It's crazy over there. I'm not going to the Flynn territory. It's crazy over there. So maybe the one big bad would have been Flynn, but I like to think in my mind that they found a way to just make it work. And Tommy just came and just was like, this is not how we do things in New York. We take over. We do everything. So he already took all his business acumen from years and years and years and just came over there and was a wild boy, right? But the character development that Jannard and Diamond did, to the point where Diamond sacrificed himself for Jannard, to me was one of the greatest moments of power. I'm not going to say in TV. There was greater moments than that. But it was one of the greater moments of power that made Power. And this is what we come to Power for. Not so much for Stacey Mark's character. Also, you know what I love about Power? Shows like Power, shows like Breaking Bad, shows like Dexter. They're crime shows, right? But what makes it so funny is that the law enforcement is never painted to be the good guys. They're always painted to be the bad guys, even when they're not corrupt. Stacey Marks was not corrupt. She did things a little crazy, right? But she was mostly by the book. But she was not corrupt. So it's funny to watch it and you see somebody like Stacey Marks or her ex-husband or, Ghost's ex Angie or any other person like Proctor, Sachs, not Proctor, who's a lawyer, Sachs, right? When you see some of those people just to stay in the Power universe, it's just funny to watch them just like get taken out. And we're sitting there like, damn, we got taken out. But when they're trying to do the right thing and go after these people, we're just sitting there like, you whack, man. Why you don't want to see my man go shine? Because he's breaking the law. That's why. This man is doing his job just like Ghost is doing his. Ghost is a drug dealer. He's going to sell drugs, right? But Sachs is a cop. So, Sachs is a district attorney, whatever. He's going to try to take out Ghost. So that is what makes this show funny. Stacey Marks was a cop who was running for mayor, right? And she was a cop who was trying to move up. I don't think it was mayor. It was a district attorney. It was whatever. Stacey Marks was law enforcement. Tommy Eagan is not law enforcement. He is a criminal. So she was doing her job. She did it really sloppily at times, even to the point of her own demise, where it was like, did you really have to go at Tommy by yourself? So it's one of those moments where you always laugh because you're like, when they go out, they always go out by themselves, right? But we always get mad when we see somebody doing their job. I'm a cop, okay? So why you got to go after him? Because I'm a cop. So that's why I laugh when I watch Power and all these other crime shows, because all of the law enforcement is always going to be looked at as the worst possible person, even when they aren't being the worst possible person. And I know that's how the show was designed. It just still always makes me laugh. So when I look at this show again, I thought it was a good show. It grew over time, right? Season 1 was cool. Season 2 got a little better, but season 3 was really where it shined. We got to see people crash out. We got to see people fall out. We got to see alliances be formed, alliances get broken, all that stuff. But the one thing I can say again is that Jannard and Diamond were the stars of this season. Not Vic, not his sister, not Manera, not none of them. It was Jannard and Diamond, right? I mean, even though it was funny with the King Lope that became a meme, I was like, you and Diamond playing games in that joint? That was funny, but still, that was also whack too. Hold on. I need a minute to really talk about that. That was corny. First off, again, like I said, I thought he was going to be the big bad. I thought he was going to be the final boss at the end of all of this. And for your mans to pull up and like go and look for, D-Mac and try to take him out, and he only lasted for like what, an episode? Because Jannard took him out? It was just like and the same thing with Ortega. Thought he was gonna be a big bad. He gets out, he hires assassins while he's in jail, right? And these assassins were the worst assassins ever because one of them had a partner, couldn't take out Miguel by himself. I think another one tried to get Tommy, or it was the same guy. He couldn't take out Tommy. And then he goes for Tommy's baby moms, and she is the one that finishes him off, and she ain't about that life. So it was just like, who hired this guy? Ortega had to be one of the worst villains in power I've ever seen in my life. Because then when he finally gets out, he's like, all right, I'm gonna take out Tommy. We wait, we see him at his house, we see him with goons, we think, oh, okay, he's gonna take Tommy out, or they're gonna have some final standoff. Maybe it's him and CBI versus Tommy and Miguel. Who knows? And what ends up happening? They go to Shay. Shay has a meeting. He does a bait and switch on Tommy and makes Tommy think he's getting taken out, makes Ortega think they're joining forces to then just have Tommy take out Ortega just like that. And that was that. So all of the possible threats were taken out by the last 2 or 3 episodes, except Jannard and Victor Flynn. You see what I'm saying? It's those moments where you're like, you build these guys up to then really do nothing. Like King Loke was built up to be a problem, I think, since season 2. And the same thing with Ortega. For them to get taken out in one episode was just really sad. It was sad. But finally, one thing I want to say is D-Mac is quite possibly, when you really look back, when you really look at it, right? You have the Trouble Youth squad of Kanan, D-Mac, and Tariq, right? That's how you look at it from the 3 stories of power, right? Between OG Power and Ghost and Raising Kanan and Force. And you look and you say, who is the worst of the 3, right? Technically, one would say D-Mac, right? Tariq had his ups and downs, and Kanan also was very stubborn. But D-Mac was just like volatile and reckless. However, what's funny is that it was kind of almost like a cartoon watching Jannard and Diamond try to set D-Mac up to get taken out for good. And he would always come back and be like, yeah, I did it. What do you want me to do? I took them all out. And they're just like, how does he keep surviving? And that is how D-Mac grew to be a legend. And this dude is now a certified G. So if they do bring back another season of Power and it involves Tommy, Tommy should definitely have D-Mac follow him to New York and they just become the best there. Because now you get a crew. It's going to be funny because Tommy's going to have a crew of youngins because it's going to be Ghost, it's going to be Tariq and Braden and Effie and Kane and Drew and Diana and now D-Mac. So I think it's going to be funny to watch like Tommy be like this middle-aged man with a bunch of like young adults moving around every day. But long live D-Mac, man. That guy was surviving every possible scenario where he probably should have got taken out. And he was going through it. But the look on Jannard and Diamond's faces every time he came back, priceless. He just kept pulling up and being like, what's up? So again, I don't want to go into full detail because I'm really focusing more on one episode rather than the whole season, but I did have to pull from the season as well. All in all, I'll say the final episode, my verdict was that the final episode was right? Because it was a big payoff with Tariq that we've had since the end of Tariq's story that ended up just not really paying off as much as we would have liked it if you're a fan of Power. But the season of Power Force, to me, was valid. The whole entire final season was valid. The show overall was The show overall was alright. It was cool for what it was. It had moments that was pretty cool. It had moments that was like, it's kind of boring. But at the end of it all, again, the only thing that had me sitting there like, what, was the fact that they did all of this for Tommy to eventually be, one of the top bosses in Chicago, to then just leave Chicago. And then you set up these two big bads on a cliffhanger. And then we play the original Power theme song. And then I guess we're to pray in our hearts that, Tommy and Tariq have their own TV show. Now, I know we're getting Power Origins, which is supposed to talk about young Tommy and young Ghost being raised by Kanan in this case. But other than that, it's all we really get. And it kind of reminds me of, if you know, the original Teen Titans in the early 2000s when, Beast Boy just ran through that door and we ain't never seen what happened after that. Next thing you know, Teen Titans Go. So, I hope we don't get a Power Go, but whatever. It is what it is. If you want to talk theories, if you want to talk favorite characters, least favorite characters, favorite scenes, least favorite scenes, if you feel I said something wrong and you disagree, write me in the comments. I will write back. Follow me on all social media using the link tree in the description, or you can just go to the description of our YouTube page and look at the description there. The link tree will be there as well. And check out everything else I'm doing and the content that I'm brewing on another edition of Nerds in the Hood. It's your boy Marv Latt, and I'm off this baby. They say this is a big rich town.